So, this was actually my second piece of the day. Earlier that morning, I was already in Montreal painting at Core's birthday jam. And somehow, I still had enough energy left to head over to the 613 Supplys Graffiti Jam in PSC Montreal afterwards. Honestly, by the end of this day, I was completely cooked. But this one came out exactly how I wanted. Simple letters, strong structure, bright colors, and probably one of my cleanest straight 3Ds in a long time. So today, I'm bringing you along for part 2 of my graffiti marathon Saturday. Let's get into it. Hey gang, what is going on? My name's Sone, I'm a writer from Montreal, Canada. Welcome to the show. So, before heading out, I spent a while working on this sketch in Procreate on my iPad. Lately, I've been really enjoying simple letter structures. Not simple as in boring, but simple in the sense that the letters stay readable and dominant instead of getting buried under a million extensions and add-ons. I wanted the letters themselves to carry the piece, and honestly, I think that's something I've been learning recently. Sometimes less actually hits harder. So I focused on strong bars, solid flow, clean direction changes, and good balance throughout the whole piece. The colors took me forever though. At first I tried different fills, blues, pinks, some darker combinations, but none of them really worked with the energy of the piece. Then I tried green. Immediately it clicked. That Hulk green fill with the red 3D just had that classic aggressive contrast that graffiti pieces need sometimes. It felt vibrant, loud, and super visible from a distance. That red 3D also took a while to settle on. I tested a few combinations digitally, but this night red setup just looked mean. Especially once I tried adding the fades. So once the sketch was ready, I grabbed my paint and headed out the door. When I got to the jam, the atmosphere was already amazing. There were artists everywhere, people painting, people chilling, music playing. The organizer showed me to my spot, and I basically jumped straight into it. Since this was already my second piece of the day, I knew I couldn't waste too much time. I needed to stay efficient, so I started by sketching out the structure directly on the wall. At this stage, proportions are everything. So the first thing I did is make a line where my piece was going to begin, and another where my piece would end. Then I slashed it in the middle, and I knew I had an exact fit for 2 letters on the left and 2 letters on the right. Now in order to get this to look clean, the width of every bar has to be the same. So I start by sketching one line, then I use the width of my spray can to determine where my second line will be. Because if one bar is too thick, or one angle is too long, the whole thing starts feeling off. So I took my time getting the skeleton right before committing to paint. Once the structure felt balanced, I started filling everything in Hulk green, and instantly the piece started coming alive. After the base fill was done, I started building the lighting. This is probably my favorite part lately. I lightly traced a line in Sone green, then I dusted fluorescent yellow through the middle of every letter and every bar. Not solid lines, just soft fades. That fluorescent yellow gives the letters this glowing energy without overpowering the green. Then I added white highlights at all the angular points. Tiny touches, but they made such a difference. That's something I've been really focusing on, using lighting to create shape. Because graffiti isn't just flat letters, you're basically sculpting forms with spray paint. Once the highlights were in, I started doing the shadows. For this, I used my translucent black, and instead of blasting solid black everywhere, I spread at an angle, darker near the edges, softer towards the middle. That soft fade creates the illusion that the letters are rounded instead of flat. It gives the piece depth without making it muddy. And honestly, this is one of the cleanest shadow passes I've done in a while. Everything blended super smoothly. At this point, the piece was already hitting hard. But the craziest part was still coming, the 3D. Now this was a big change for me. Usually when I do a 3D, I aim everything towards a lower focal point. That's kind of become my default style. But for this piece, I decided to do something I almost never do. Straight 3D towards the left side. No focal point, no dramatic perspective pull, just straight directional force. Honestly, I think I just needed a change. And it worked way better than I expected. It gave the whole piece this bold graphic look, almost logo-like, very clean, very aggressive. Now once the lines were done, I started building the face using night red, Bordeaux, Madrid, vivid red, and light red. The night red is crazy dark. It almost looks black in certain lighting. A very similar vibe to Vampire Purple. And because the reds ranged from super dark to bright, I could get these really smooth transitions inside the 3D. That's what gives it that glowing layered effect.
They're gonna be sorry they were ever born. Who? All of them.
Yeah, W, look, beat 'em up just like it's WWW. Promise you, why would I trouble you? Yeah, look.
By this point, people around me were starting to notice the piece was coming together. And honestly, that always feels good. Especially after already painting one full wall earlier that day. Once the 3D was done, I added the electric blue uni around the whole piece. That blue was perfect against the red. It separated everything from the wall while making the colors pop even harder. But I didn't want the uni to just sit there looking clean and static, so I started making it leak downwards. And then, I added colored streak coming from the piece itself into the blue drips. Almost like the paint hadn't fully dried yet and the colors were bleeding downwards. That little detail added so much movement, it made the piece feel alive. And honestly, I think those leaks tied the whole thing together. They helped balance the cleaner geometry of the letters with something more organic and messy. That contrast always looks good in graffiti. Clean structure with controlled chaos. Even though I started painting a few hours after most people, I somehow still finished around the same time as everybody else. So after wrapping up my piece, I walked around filming other artists and getting footage of the jam. So let's see who we have here. Heaven, Katie, Inas, Skoix, Rawls, Rough Row, and Phoenix. Honestly, the event was small, but it was a huge success. Great people, great energy, great walls. Massive shout out to 613 Supplys for organizing this jam. These events are super important for the graffiti community. They bring artists together, push styles forward, and honestly, just makes people want to paint more. And for me personally, this piece feels like a turning point stylistically. Simple letters, cleaner structure, more focus on lighting and depth. I'm really liking where this direction is taking me. So let me know in the comments, what's your favorite part of this piece? The fill, the 3D, the leaks, or the overall color combo? And don't forget, part 1 from earlier that same day is coming next week, so subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time, stay up.